Most people think becoming a CTO is about knowing the most. Today's guest would tell you it's about knowing what can go wrong. Mark has started his career in nuclear technology, moved to military networks. From there, he started journey about enterprise AI, and now he is building AI operating system that can run hospitals, construction sites autonomously. He has one belief that makes most Silicon Valley engineers uncomfortable. And by the end of this episode, you will agree with him. Okay, great. Perfect. Welcome, Mark, to the CTO Story Podcast. Great.
Thank you, Nishant.
Let's get started. Mark, tell me something about yourself, what you do it, how you do it, and a little bit about your journey.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. Thanks very much, first of all, Nishant, for having me on. Excited to have the discussion with you. I know we've had great conversations in the past, and I look forward to always engaging and learning as we talk. So, yeah, I am the CTO of Superwise. Superwise is an enterprise AI governance and operations platform. What we do is really provide the guardrails, controls, the operations, the predictability and trustworthy of AI for businesses looking to deploy AI to improve their capabilities, to improve their experiences with customers, and improve the way they take products and services to market. So yeah, like we said, I've been around in a lot of different industries and careers, ranging from nuclear power, as you said in the introduction, all the way now to enterprise AI. So I look forward to the conversation today.
That's very interesting. You mentioned about nuclear energy part. This
Yes.
interesting. So want to understand because normally I've seen most of the CTOs come from the background of software engineering, PhD, and those kind of like uh, uh, software engineering background itself. You coming from a nuclear energy background where you work with nuclear power plants, you have work with, I would say, the military communication part.
Mhm.
Based on your understanding, what it gives you an advantage compared to the person who is CTO and have done computer science PhD. They simply don't have those advantages. What advantages you have as a CTO?
Sure. And by the way, I the computer scientists, PhDs, I love working with, right? So, we all bring something to the table. Um, I would argue what I bring though is similar to the debate going on in the technical circles in AI right now, right? There's this what everybody's using, a consumer generative AI, right? And then there's these big companies that are furthering that. And then there's the initiatives people are taking around physical AI, where they're saying there's a limit to what text-based learning can learn, right? You have to understand the physical world, and how do we understand the physical world? A lot of the physical AI models, they're taking some of their understanding from babies in a crib, and they talk about how does the baby become a scientist and experiment constantly. I'd argue that my background comes from that physical world, whether it's in nuclear power or satellite communications or other industries. Understanding those parts of things and taking that to AI has a definite value as well. We'll see how the physical AI versus consumer generative, and I'm not sure it's an exact analogy between the my physical background and the computer sciences developing advanced software. They're both needed,
I
but
agree.
that's my
I
differentiation.
agree. So what I understood is like you are saying like working in the physical environment, nuclear satellite communication
Yeah,
is different compared to where only the software engineering is. So I get it. So that's the physical EI. That's what the I would say the experience, that's what you bring on the table compared to like on the computer science. Okay, give me specific example of this, like how you think when you are building AI softwares or the physical AI compared to like I would say in your previous experience in nuclear reactor, while right, refilling all the nuclear liquid.
Yep.
Does there anything happen that change the way that you think the software should work? Was there any instance
Yes.
you think like, oh, okay, now in the software also you are implementing the same analogy to make sure it's scale, it is guardrail properly, and make sure somebody is not dying.
Yeah, that's Yeah, so, and again, I was actually mechanical engineering in undergrad and then went into nuclear power. And yeah, like you were referring to, we were on USS Enterprise refueling eight reactor cores. So
Okay.
taking the old cores out and putting new ones in a downtown industrial thing. So if you do things wrong, some bad things, could certainly happen. But you train uh, to make sure that doesn't happen. You also put the controls in place to make sure that doesn't happen. And then you execute by what you planned on doing. And I think a lot of what we do here at Superwise, but a lot of how I think about things is building that trust within the capabilities. Now, a lot of people have studied in what embedded systems and formal methods, a lot of different types of things about embedding trust into software, and that's fantastic to bring forward. But we also have to bring trust in AI and bring that forward. And so, how do you do that natively when you're building the AI? How do you build in the controls? Or if somebody else builds it, how do you make sure it's behaving properly? So I think a lot of what informs myself is really how do you know what's going on, and how do you do that in a trained, trusted way? And then when it doesn't do that the right ways, what do you do about it, and what can you do about it?
So let me pause over here and
Yeah.
talk to the audience what exactly the mark is talking about.
Mm.
All the people who are developing right now AI, they're talking about Claude AI, ChatGPT, all the different tools all together, like automations, oh, browser automation, machine automations, everything. What
Yeah.
Mark is describing right now, which nobody, most of the people are not working, where a single error will cause a drastic, I would say, a die of a person, or I would say, it's the
Mhm.
matter of live or die. I mean, nobody
Mhm.
is working on that. So that's the physically, yeah, that's what the Mark is talking about, just to fill in the gap. And I think that that's exactly what Mark is filling the gap between a normal PhD software engineering grad CTO versus what Mark is bringing on the table about the physical AI. Okay, great. Perfect. So now let's ramp it up a little bit about what actually takes to become a CTO. So let's talk about a little bit of path, like, because I think a lot of people have a misunderstanding that what exactly a tech CTO does
Mhm.
versus what people think they do actually. Right. So let's a little bit think about that. So Mark, tell me a little bit about when you become a first time CTO, I would say. Yeah. And during first 90 days of becoming a first time CTO, was there any specific things that nobody has informed you before? Was it a system? Was it a people? What exactly you learned first time with the hard learning becoming a first time CTO?
Yeah, I think the things. So I've been in business, but I've also been in organizations that are not business. But particularly in business, right? You're there as a for-profit organization, right? And so there's two dynamics going on, and that the first time CTO. First of all, you're being brought in to drive something, not to just manage, but to drive, right? You need to drive an output. That output is something that will benefit the business, will increase the value of the business. And in order to do that, you have to enact change, and uh, in order to enact change, you have to have trust of the people that you're gonna take along that ride. And so some of the challenges I see are the expectations of people that are in business,
Mm-hmm.
and rightfully so. They're investing, or they're expecting to get a return on their investment, or make profit. And then the development teams that you're coming in and working with, in engineering, in product management, and in sales, and figuring out that shared understanding amongst them. At the same time, doing it at a pace that the investors want and need. And I think that balancing that, that tug, constant back and forth is a challenge. I think a lot of people come up on the technical side and think they're advancing their management of technology. And they're actually now have one leg still on that technology, but now they're on business drivers, that they might not be used to.
Makes sense. So this brings to me the 2 points over here, right? You rightly mentioned. One is the CTO brings on the team with some specific purpose
Yep.
that is not just a tech, but it's a drive the motion, or drive the innovation part. Or I would say they have a specific purpose. And that specific purpose has a business value attached to that. They want to,
Yes.
as a business owner or as an investor, they want to do something. That's why with that particular motive, they get a CTO in place. Now, CTO
Mhm.
has to manage the business part, make sure the investors' motive is being fulfilled over here. And on the other side, you have a team members, or the whole team, which you need to make sure they are also aligned. So based
Yes.
on my understanding, when I go as a CTO in specific company, what I do is basically analyze the current team. Is there any specific gap between what investors or the founders want and what exactly the team is doing? Is there a speed alignment? Is there an innovation alignment? Are they on the same boat where they are moving? It should not be something
Yeah.
one person
Great
wants to
point.
do something and the investors or the founders wants to do something. So we need to go and then analyze and see where they are, and then basically from there it starts. Um,
Yep. I agree.
that
Yeah.
because we need to know the land where we gonna work, right? I mean that's the
Yeah. I so agree, Nishant. I would say, uh, I say a lot that a lot of these things come down to two things. One is shared understanding, right? And you just described what that shared, from the people building things, the people selling things, the people investing in things, and then product market fit. So even if everybody agrees, are you providing something valuable, not only now, but 6 months from now and 18 months from now? However, I would say out of those two, out of the shared understanding and the product market fit, the shared understanding is the harder one.
it's harder. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Because I have seen a lot of like startups, they start with the big innovation and big problem they want to solve, but
Yep.
most of the startups fail because of the shared vision not being matched between founders.
Yep.
Because and that's the investor has to make sure like it's a shared vision between founders, making sure they are aligned, they are in the same boat, and
Yeah.
it should not be something like one person is going north, one person is going on south. Then
Right.
it
Exactly.
is not being domain. So that's what I think most
Yeah.
of the CTO has to make sure like everybody is aligned and we drive
Yep.
the innovation from there. So makes sense. Um,
Yep.
tell me more on the technical part, Mark. Now let's a little bit start on the tech part as well.
Right.
Being a CTO, you take a lot of technical decision which align with the growth of the business. So it's a
Mhm.
business. Keep in mind you take the tech decision. Any decision that you think that you previously took, you could have taken differently if you are today. What was that?
Yes.
Was any specific decision?
Yeah. I mean, certainly there's a lot of them. I think one of them I remember when I was more of a engineering manager than CTO, was how to build network management for a satellite communication system. And we had network engineers. We didn't have software engineers,
Okay.
and so then the decision that I made on hiring people, the software side of things, to build the network management capability, um, really didn't bridge that gap. They knew how to build software, but as far as network management for satellite communications, and I I don't blame them though. I probably blame myself more, right? Because one, people can learn. They were smart people. I could have informed them better, and I could have really guided them. Because a lot of times, right, you get. I'm sure Nishant, you're familiar with Ian too. You get into these feature discussions. I want this feature, or I want that feature.
Yeah.
But sometimes the intent is missed,
That's true.
and then so sometimes if a developer's not empowered to understand the intent, sometimes they'll build the letter of that feature, but they won't really understand the whys, and then maybe not help you get the right things that you need.
Exactly.
So
So the
yeah,
intent, you mentioned that, right? Help me.
yeah,
This is getting exciting. What exactly you were
yeah.
building, by the way, Mark, for satellite communication? Is it like for the internet purpose? Was it a data sharing? Was it a bidirectional communication from satellite to Earth, or it was one direction? How exactly? If it's shared.
Yeah, well, I'm going to date myself a little bit, but the at the time, people used time division multiplexing, right? So you had a synchronous communication. So you could have one-way communications too, but you had synchronous communication, and you had would buy on a commercial satellite fixed bandwidth. The dating part I'm going to say is like, we would have a T1, right? 1.5 megabits, right? And in Europe, E1 would be like 2 megabits per second, right? So, but you would time division multiplex that. So you would have a set channel, and if it wasn't being used, you were still paying for that. So how to get into statistically multiplexing, but also getting into some data analytics on what's being used, and then assigning bandwidth based on that. And we had a platform that we were building to do that, basically an edge hardware platform that could take in the data, and then manage that. So, but to control that edge, you couldn't just you could have an element management system, but to control that edge, you have to have a lot more knowledge about the whole network. So you needed a network
Makes
management
sense.
system.
Okay, so what I understood in simpler word, there was a satellite internet data that you were providing as a service for the satellite communication, and that
Yeah,
bandwidth needs to be distributed or multiply in a way that it is either equally distributed or based on the plan the bandwidth needs to be distributed. So is that correct? Okay, got it. Okay.
yeah. I mean, and we have techniques now to do that, but at the time,
At that
you
time.
basically, if you weren't, it was almost like a highway, right? If a lane wasn't being used, you still couldn't have the other cars go in that lane.
Makes sense.
So how do you take advantage of that? So,
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, now we are talking about like CTO. Now tell me in the enterprise level, Mark, how
yeah,
CTO is differentiating, or what are the role differentiate of VP of engineering versus a
yeah,
CTO? Because most of the people that are listening right now, they have uh, a confusion. Why VP of engineering is same as CTO?
yeah.
Tell me something more about how they differentiate. What are one or two decision you can give an example as well. What decision metrics they are different, and if you have an idea about like resi metrics, tell me like what is responsibility of VP of engineering and what is the responsibility of CTO. If you can give me in the enterprise level of discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a great discussion, and um, sometimes depending on how big you are, right? Sometimes it is the same role, and sometimes the CDO is the product manager as well, right? So, but eventually, you hope to grow, and rightfully those um, roles starts splitting out. So, um, for me, the big driver on the C2, you need to be informed. You need to understand your capabilities and certainly understand deeply engineering. But you're really trying to drive what's coming next and where things are going in the industry, where things are going with your capabilities, what customers are asking for, what customers need but they aren't asking for, and how that translates into technology. And again, back to what the value that are is potential in the marketplace. So it's a much more, I would argue, forward looking role, and the measures that you're looking to achieve have to do more with, say, um, your user base. How do you grow that user base? Your customer base, what they're looking for and what they're willing to buy, what your market position is, how is your technology better or different or ahead of other technologies that people could choose from. These type of discussions. How do you do things that are going to be more efficient and profitable? So obviously, people are getting into the whole code gen discussion right now, right? And the efficiency associated with that. And in the VP of engineering role, there's certainly measures around rework. There's also, the sprint planning and taking the input from the product roadmap and efficiently doing that, and those type associated. So they're very, I would argue, tightly linked. And I think, similar to, by the way, I like to point, people who grow up technically, I encourage them sometime in their life to go try to sell something.
Yeah.
And not only that, but go try to sell something to the same person twice. Because then you have to do something, and they say, "Hey, yeah, I bought something from you. I like it. I'm going to buy it again." Um, it's eye opening for a developer. I also point to the people on business side as well. There's so much opportunity to go code. Go try to build something.
Yeah.
Um,
100%.
yeah, because then you might have a little more internal feeling of what it means to build
Yeah,
something,
that's true.
right? And
That's
so
true.
I think a CTO who's been a VP of engineering is a good thing. I think a CTO has been a product manager has been a good thing, as long as you have the ability to understand the technical and business side. But I think those experiences help. So while the roles are different, I can see people who are in engineering, but there are also, I've known, when I've been a product manager, engineers who are really good at, hey, give me the requirements and I'm going to build those very efficiently. And that's more of a, and you can grow up a VP engineering, but that's not, if you're going to be a CTO, there's more to it than that.
Yeah, that's true. So if I want to summarize that, the VP of engineers work inside the company. The CTO works on top of the company. They have to look at outside, inside, making sure everything is aligned, business requirement. So that's how I always use within company.
That's a good one. Yeah.
And then CTO works on top of the company from tech product, making sure the business is aligned with the tech as well. So I think that,
Yeah.
yeah, that.
I like how you said that. I think I'll steal that from you.
No, it is. No, good, okay, perfect. Okay, I think this gives a very good analogy from of engineering and what CTO does, because VP of engineering definitely has to work more on their tech, making sure team is aligned on their tech engineering, fully on tech. they don't take care about the business, whereas the CTO is answerable when things fail. They're answerable
Yeah.
of why we are not ahead of the curve on the tech side. So
Yeah.
that's the 16-month.
Yeah. Not only why things fail, but why didn't you see this coming? Well,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
right.
So yeah, so makes sense. And the CTO also needs to make sure there is an USP of the tech as well, not from the business part, because in the business we say we have let's talk about, because I'm right now working on the voice AI
Yeah.
product. So the
Your
CEO might
videos are
say,
great. I encourage everybody to watch them. Your voice and voice to text and voice to write. Yeah,
yeah.
fantastic stuff.
So the CEO might say we have the lowest latency available, and our tech stack is so aligned and optimized that it has the lowest latency possible in the voice AI. But CTO has to prove that. So that's the difference. What CEO does say and what CTO says, and then actual VP of engineering has to make sure it is being done in that way. So I think that's the analogy.
Yeah.
Oh, great. I think let's go a little bit, because now I keep seeing you on the virtual world of LinkedIn as well, and I want to get into something you post consistently, like, and that is the one thing that I think makes a lot of people sitting in Silicon Valley uncomfortable. You draw a very, very hard lines between consumer generative AI and the enterprise AI. Explain to the audience, like to someone who just raised Series A in their fundraising path, and think like chat gpt is their whole tech stack. Is it true?
Yeah.
I'm sure like a lot of people gonna laugh at you as well, but tell me, like, is this true? How you look at that?
Yeah. So I'll argue, and yeah, to get in trouble. I don't think it's not true, and I don't think it'll ever be true. That doesn't mean I can predict how AI models are going to advance in the future, right? A lot of people say, is it going to be this or is it going to be that? I'll say, I'll give you my opinion, but I don't know, right? And some just like somebody predicting the stock market, that if they say they definitely know, well, I'd argue. And I'll take a little step back too. So you and I have been in AI for a while now, right? So and before generative AI, right? And I think it's good to say the term consumer generative AI, right? That is, where people put in things and get things out. And there's benefits to it, right? I mean, I think it'd be foolish not to be using or experimenting with it. And all of us who do search, sometimes now we just take the output rather than maybe do search. And it depends if we're trying to find out a recipe or something like that. I think it's fine to get that. But if you're trying to do peer reviewed research, you probably better get those references. But back before consumer generative AI, when you're talking to enterprise AI, it was a lot about training models,
Hmm.
and those models were then usually to predict something or provide an output, an improved operation, a more operational efficient environment, a new product or service that someone could offer, or a new customer experience. And you train those models based on that business's data,
Hmm.
right? And so a lot of people then got in discussions. Well, is the data clean enough or messy enough, or can you clean it, that messy data enough? And a lot of businesses were very like, I can't do this yet. I got to go clean my data first. And I would argue, well, if you start training some models early on, you realize maybe you don't have to clean all your data. Maybe you can save money on what you're going to do, and iterate. Right? We us engineers know it's we're better off iterating. And so, but that was that extreme. Now, post 2022, like you said, you have the people who are vibe coding, or on the development, or they're doing customer experience agents and all this stuff, and they're they're saying, that's my tech stack now, right? Um, and and I would argue that you know, this is not new, right? The businesses have a responsibility. They have a fiduciary responsibility. They have a responsibility to customers. They have a lot of different responsibilities to use technology wisely. And just uploading information into, a third party, and I don't know how what you're paying on tokens and how much then rework that needs to be done in development. I'm not saying not to use these tools; they're incredibly powerful, but I think there's still expertise. There's still the right guardrails, the observability and operations. What we focus on here in Superwise, that people need to still engineer.
Yeah, that's true.
We
That
still have, these technologies. I'll give you like just a for instance, right? The A lot of well, I wouldn't say a lot. A particular scenario with one of our customers that does medical information for individuals,
okay.
and then helping doctors assess that, right? And some of the technology, Nishant, that you build have to do around, transcription, right? Audio transcription into text. But a lot of that is very sensitive information.
That's true.
And if you design it properly, you can still use some of the technologies in the shop that I know you build, but you don't always need a large language model service and send that up. If you do good engineering, you can do things on the edge. You can use smaller language models. You can employ guardrails. You can only allow certain outputs. And so that's why I point to, that enterprise AI is not consumer generative AI.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So
That's true.
anyways, I get a little passionate about that. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, in the consumer AI, everything is like how the software engineer think I have seen is okay. There is a brain which they consider LLM. They put
Yeah.
inside the data. They say, okay, tell me do something like this.
Yeah.
But that brain is not predictable. The output is always going to be different, and that
Yeah.
doesn't work
Yeah.
in enterprise. Not at all.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. The deterministic nature of things. Uh, and again, I'm not saying they're the concept of a language model, right? I mean, and that's, by the way, that the other challenge I see is when on the consumer generative AI and enterprise AI, there's businesses, first of all, run on tabular data, right? I.e. spreadsheets. Everybody still has their spreadsheets, right? And so, while language models are getting better at dealing with spreadsheet information, that's not their strong suit. And by the way, a lot of things you can do with tabular data. There's other types of AI that are available. I also think back to the whole physical, right? Half of physical AI is computer vision. And doing things with computer vision. Again, I'm not saying that these generative models will never get there, although some people say they will never get there. But there's certainly the proper models that are a lot smaller, are more manageable, that are more predictable, that you can understand, in a lot of different types of situations. And so that's the other thing I think, uh, now that AI is, everybody hears it 10 times a day, that everybody equates AI with consumer generative AI. And so that's what I'm like, all right, well, there's a lot of types of AI, and consumer generative is certainly one. The other thing is, again, that, you know, consumer generative AI doesn't mean enterprise AI.
Yeah, that's true. Because in the enterprise, you always need a predictability. Make sure like the same thing can be repeated. If the same input goes input, it should have a same output all the time. So that's the one baseline that enterprise all have. Whereas the consumer AI that Like it should be personalized and different for all the consumer basically. Um,
Yeah, you and I were talking, right, previously, discussion of voice into tools, right? And, that when you take a interface, a natural language interface or a voice interface, um, but the output is, say, a project management on a construction site, right? And say, or optimizing assets. Um, Regardless of that input, there's certain things that business wants to get done, and it
yeah,
needs to be mapped into those predictable things that you're
exactly,
talking about. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Because that's the major shift I'm kind of analyzing right now. Before the generative AI, there is a button on the mobile app. You click on
Yeah.
that one REST API being called, you have the output. If the data
Right.
is same, the output will be same. In the
Yeah.
generative AI, is the whole different things. It's
Yeah.
an intent detection. If a user says very confusing statement, hey, last time you haven't give me discount, I want that this time always. Make sure you give me discount to avoid it. The LLM model get confused. What is the intent? Do
Yes.
they want to book? Do they want to get the discount? Are they complaining? What exactly they are? So which API I need to call? So it's always going
Yes.
like different all the times. The user
Yes.
because the user's expressions are different
Yes. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
different geolocations as well. The same thing to express is way different. So
Yes.
that's why I think the small language
Agreed.
model matters a lot because that needs to be trained data at the localization level, and that matters
That's
a
right.
lot. And
Yes.
that's where I think as a CTO comes into picture. They say, okay, we have to take the decision accordingly where we are launching this product, how we are doing that. We're gonna use that. That's
Yeah.
the difference. That's exactly what CTO does. Uh,
Yes.
yeah, I think during your career so far, Mark, you work a lot as a product project management. You have work also with the founders, with the enterprise people as well. During this journey, give me one example where you have seen like where a company treated AI like a consumer product in an enterprise level, in an enterprise context, and then they realize, oh, that was the wrong decision, or they have paid for it. Do you remember any such example?
Yeah. I mean, I think, and I'm hoping more people will recognize this, but I think uh, more and more, right, when people are generating content, right, there was the craze of, oh, look what content I can generate. I can input this prompt and output, and we won't get into the specific industry or specific customer and all that, but they were quickly jumping into that. And the two things that happened: one, the content was not predictable. Um, in some cases, it was just not correct, right? It was wrong.
Yeah.
But also the information that they were allowing people to upload violated some of their policies, right? And then the final part with that was they did it as a pet project, and they didn't have any wherewithal to do anything about any of those problems,
Yeah.
right? And so I think the onus on generating things, whether you're generating code or whether you're generating a recommendation to somebody or whether you're generating a reference, still resides with that business, and they quickly saw the mechanism and
That's
and
true.
and didn't get into a lot of the other things. And yeah, so that was, I would say, four parts of that. But hopefully we're all getting better at that as
I'm
as
sure.
as we
I'm
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
And the next question is, Mark, at the enterprise level, at the enterprise
yeah.
industry, because that's where you are focusing right now.
Yep.
Does a dedicated AI leader required in the company who is just focusing on AI right now? Is it just a bubble, or it's something like one of the AI leader in the company is required who just focus on AI? What do you think on that?
Yeah, so I am a big, big advocate for AI literacy throughout an organization. And this might come from my nuclear background, and I'll even, I'll single out one guy because you can look him on Wikipedia. But in the nuclear power that I was trained in naval nuclear power, there was a guy, Hyman Rickover, who was in charge of it. Now, by the time I was in it, he was no longer running, but his influence was. And he was adamant that if you were going to run something, you have to understand every order you give, every different role. You've had to experience that, and not just read about it, but actually put your hands on a turbine generator, actually move the knobs, actually turn. You might not have to be good at it, but you have to understand it. And so I see, I see the value, chief AI officer. I see the value of enterprises having a organization focused on that. And a matter of fact, any emerging technology, right?
Yeah,
I've been involved with a lot. It's good to have a group. Um, but if that knowledge is not being expanded, matter of fact, when we engage with customers, I always tell them, take advantage of this engagement to learn from us.
yeah,
Now, you're gonna my pitch. Obviously, it's gonna be better to work with us, right? Our products are great. We're recognized in the industry and all that stuff. But if you're not learning it yourself, there was an old commercial in the U.S. A guy selling suits. That an educated consumer is his best customer. I think AI education. I'm sure you see it every day too, right? You see somebody pontificating, about AI, and you're like, wow, they don't understand it because the things they're saying there. And we live in a great, there's pros and cons, there's good and bad in the world, right? But the great thing that we have is access to this information, and learning and being able to experience things, the way Admiral Rickover talked about, actually doing it. Actually doing something and understanding when I say, "Oh, can't AI do this?" Well, you have some knowledge about what you're asking
yeah,
about because it's available. So yeah,
yeah.
I think you do need that central organization. It's important, but if it's just like, oh, they're the people we just go to, and it's not diffusing throughout the organization, that's a
That's true.
problem.
That's true. So yeah, I think AI leader is definitely is a need in the enterprise. That's
Yeah,
that's what I got the model.
agreed.
Why is because somebody should be injected every day. Oh, this new came in. This new came in. Make sure is it aligned? Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
let's productize it faster in the enterprise, because if you don't productize it faster, your competitor will do, and then you will outbest, and then you are no
right,
longer in the market. So that's
right.
because the pace
And it's
at
not
which, yeah,
Yeah, it's not just output, right? Because once you have an empowered organization that people are learning, is then also to input, right? Because the things I see often come from unexpected places.
that's true.
And
Yeah,
and someone was working on something in another company, or they saw things, and how to connect all those dots, I think, is also that central,
yeah,
right? So it might be pushing things out, but it's also like, hey, these guys figured out something over here.
true.
I think it matters over here.
Yeah, for me, my startup Dialora AI, I do every day. I have
Mm.
set up a cloud bot. Make sure every day morning, 8 a.m., I receive what happened in last 24 hours about voice AI. Make sure I'm
Yeah.
being informed because I need to move so fast, right?
Yes.
So that's those signals are necessary. Being a CTO to know, being a AI leader, you must know about what is happening in the market because it is moving every
I,
day,
I
right?
agree. Well,
So
yeah.
that I think
Yeah.
that is necessity now
Yeah, I
because
always like
AI.
when I'm looking at GitHub projects, right? It's funny. It used to be, well, is it, how old is it? When was the repo updated? And if it used to be, if it was within the last 2 years, interesting. Now I'm like, all right, if it's not within the last 6 months, really in the last 3 months, there's probably something newer out there.
Yeah, that's true. 100%.
Yeah.
100%. While we are doing this a lot, Mark, about AI, okay, hey, learn faster. But what does the productivity trap actually cost the
Yeah.
company? Uh,
Yeah.
because we talk about as a leader, okay, move fast, use this tool, use this tool, use this tool. So
Yep.
there is always, it's a speed versus accuracy, if you are moving so
Right.
fast, you might lose the accuracy. How you as a CTO balancing in your company, like, okay, yes, experiment with the tool, but for the enterprise, you have to stick to the tool which is compliant, which is not taking out your data, making sure like it's there and it's stable as well. But on other side, as a CTO, you have to make sure we keep experimenting. We make sure like things are aligned and we are ahead of the curve. What is that productivity trip that you think it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very
Another,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, back to living it too, right? So, uh, prior to getting into big data and AI, I was involved with unified communications.
Yeah.
And now we just accept that unified communications exists, but there was a time when they weren't as unified. But everybody was, when you sold it to an enterprise, everybody's like, oh, well, what's the value? And everybody said, well, you'd save 5 minutes here, or you save 15 minutes here, right? This productivity discussion, and then you would add up, all right, well, you've saved 1,000 people 15 minutes, and their labor rate is this, and then you come up with a dollar figure, and you'd say, here's your business case, right? And for a little bit that worked, and everybody started realizing, well, yeah, but what's my output difference? Am I building more products or more valuable products? Is my user base growing? So I see this, and matter of fact, I read a good Medium post the other day that talks about similar discussion, right? That they see a lot of these tools, um, they're adding intensity to work.
The cop.
That means, yes, you can get a lot more done. Like Nishant, with your club out, you can keep track of a lot more
Yeah.
things. But eventually, Nishant, you are an innovator in and of yourself, and you're creating new capabilities.
Sure.
And so yes, you need to be informed, but you can get very productive at being informed, and maybe the value Nishant brings to our industry is somehow understanding what's going on with that,
Yep.
but then applying it for the value for to make customers that work with
Exactly.
you. So, a lot of I'm all for uh doing things you want to do and not doing things you don't want to do, and getting into jobs to be done, and those type discussions, right?
Yes.
And so I'm not against being more productive. I just think if there's not a business measure that is relating to that product, sometimes you see everybody's more productive, but my revenue hasn't changed, or
Yeah.
everybody's more. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I have read
Yeah.
somewhere like two things that is very interesting. One person somewhere in the x.com, which is like previously was Twitter, like everybody is saving time. Okay, 10x faster, X amount of faster. I'm saving X amount of hours every day. Are you using those saved hours somewhere else, or you are just kind of being lazy? That's the, and it was just
Yeah.
a mimic they were trying to. And the second point is everybody is saying like, okay, we are saving this, we are saving this, we are saving this. Are you going in the right direction, or you are spread it everywhere? It's the second point, right? I mean, because you need to
Yeah.
make sure you are connecting the dots.
Yeah.
Productivity means, is it increasing business value? Yes, no. Because sometimes it might happen that you are increasing your tools, AI tools billing every month. It is keep increasing. You say, okay, productivity is increasing, but your revenue is increasing or not increasing. So I think when we
Right.
say productivity and tools, price, everything increase, does revenue is increasing or not? So because the connecting the dots makes a lot of sense over here, and that's where the CTO comes in. CTO
Yeah.
says, okay, use this tool. It will have a dollar value impact as well. So I think
Yeah.
that's needed.
And I see the, a lot of the attention in AI is about cost, right? And to be blunt, right? A lot of people are saying, "Oh, I don't need, these people to do things and all that stuff." And and in some cases that's true. But that should be measured as well, right? And what if you're all of a sudden your development is a lot faster, but your rework,
Yeah.
is now again, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. For instance, another thing we're thinking about when you get into development versus governance of development, and maybe data scientists. I read another good thing, no, when you get it, you start using AI to develop AI, that those data scientists that develop the AI, but now they're having AI develop the AI, they become AI governors, right? So making sure, back to what you were saying, that productivity is focused, right? Because it may start building things that, well, wow, that was amazing, it did it, but it has nothing to do with what I'm interested in. So how do I govern it? Also, how is it make sure it's doing the right things and all that? So I think even on the cost side, which a lot of people are focusing on right now, just saying, oh, I make sure you're not just shifting a cost from one place to the other. Yeah.
Makes sense. I think this governance leads to me your work that you guys are focusing right now. Let's get into what you are building right now. I think because at the Superwise AI, uh, you are building something amazing which is related to governance. Tell me something more about that. How exactly work a non-tech person or a tech person? Tell me in very very simple words what exactly it does. If I want to use in my organization, how can I use it?
Sure. Yeah. I'll point to, and what good on the business side, our CEO likes to say this too. Like, you can go in and say to another CEO or a CTO, yeah, for that matter, for CodeGen, you could say, um, who's using AI in your organization? Right? Just a very simple question. Who and do they have the answer to that? Are they sure they have the answer? Are they what are they using it for? Are they doing it in a safe way? Are what models are they using? Does anybody know how those models were trained? Are they fit for purpose, right? So at a very basic level, right? We get into the discussion of, can you observe what's going on,
Mm.
right? And by observe, part of observing is monitoring it, but also knowing what's going on. Um, and so that's really, our some of our core capabilities. But then we build on those, right? Because observability, a lot of governance in the past has been offline, right?
Mm.
It's you have a group of people and they say, all right, our policy is this, and then they'll create a document that says this is our policy, and then they expect people to follow that policy. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. As a matter of fact, there's some great policies out there. The EU AI Act, I think, is an excellent policy.
Mm.
NIST in the US is producing great recommendations and guidance on how to use AI. There's great amounts of information available, I think, actually, to do AI the right way, or responsible AI, or explainable AI. But that's still then a document. So one thing is observability, but then the other thing is you have this document. But now this is using some of the new techniques that yourself and others and we build is, can you make that document actionable?
Mm.
I.e., if you observe something, is how is it related to that document? So can you now control things,
Mm.
right? So can you enact that policy? And the reality is, a lot of the things we're doing with digital twins, with simulation, with network graphs, The answer is yes. So you can not only observe what's going on with your AI, but you can then realize that it's maybe not aligned with a policy, and there's plenty of good policies out there. But even that, take the next step and either A, make recommendations if you have humans in the loop, or eventually maybe B, put guardrails in saying you can't do that, or C, fix it, saying, all right, you know what, for this use case, you're using a public model. You shouldn't be. You should be using a small local model. We're going to change that, right? So,
Mark,
so
tell me
getting
with the
into
example. So tell me with the example. If let's say with the supervised AI that you are building right now as a product, who could use it? Give me an example. Is it like, let's say, if I am an architect, I'm building architect models for, let's say, a building. Does that mean like it will help me, your product will help me to kind of put the rag into it and make sure it's compliant? The model that you are building as an architect, the building model, 3D model, it will be compliant with local compliance, state compliance, and the country compliance. If there is any problem in your model, it will tell you, oh, with the proactiveness, oh, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And it will also, I would say, being a proactive, it will try to kind of solve that particular problem. Tell me those kind of example.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's a couple different levels, right? So at the and and by the way, we have, and I'm sure you too, right? A lot of the customers we work with, they need us to build things as well. So we do build computer vision models, and we train small or fine tune local language models, and we build solutions. We develop applications as well. But for the observability, a lot at that observability layer, um, you get into a lot of engineers, right? That keep track of things. A lot of things like they've done to keep track of IT. So that at that observability layer, that's often an engineering discussion, like what you're describing. But I think that and then you get to maybe a more uh, product slash sometimes a CTO type discussion is the control layer. This is and into the guardrails, right? And the whole discussion we have about that. Um, but to me, more and more, as businesses take things seriously, you have some very educated, talented people in governance teams, but they're often not engineers, and so they're often separate from all of that. So they create these policies, but they don't have any relationship to what's actually going on. And so I think connecting these layers. So there's at different layers, there's different users, right? And then we get in, the whole discussion on who's putting their hands on keyboard,
Okay.
or now their voice, who's telling the software what to do, right? It's not always hands on keyboard anymore, bro.
Sure.
And then what is the value to the organization, right? And sometimes a lot of times the users and the value have to be connected. They're not necessarily the same person.
Makes sense. Okay, got it. So tell me a little bit about the governance. What exactly it is, what it includes in maybe two lines of word, and then I'll move to the next question. Is like,
All right.
what is
Yeah.
governance? Tell me in two lines what it includes in terms of. I'm thinking about in the context of AI. What exactly is governance? Is it just a
Yeah. So,
guardrails? Is it set of rules?
um,
What else it includes? Tell me a little bit about more.
no, yeah, it's in two lines. Um, say EUA Act, right, has four layers of use, right? The fourth layer you should never use AI for, and the first layer is easy, but usually the second and third layer are where you get into discussions. How do you know what it's second or third layer? Do you have someone tell you it is, or can you have the system describe itself?
Mm.
Right? And so one of the things is have the system describe itself and map it to whether it's that second or third. So that's thing one. Thing two, uh, what if it's behaving in a way that isn't aligned to that second or third? Can you change it? Can you enact that change? One of the changes certainly guardrails, but there's a lot of other different changes as well. So to me, governance, and again, governance has been around for a long time, but it's usually done on spreadsheets offline. But making governance active and empowering people that are in charge of that to be able to realize those capabilities.
Makes sense. Okay. I got a little bit more. I will go with the offline with you about like learning a lot more about governance because it's a very big topic. So I
It
think
is. It is.
yeah, I'm sure. Um, Perfect. And tell me a little bit about Superwise AI, this particular governance model. Has it been deployed anywhere and in which industries?
Yeah. So eh, we're certainly a horizontal platform, so it can be deployed in a variety of industries. Our focus really has been in industrial settings, mostly having to do with the post sales warranty involvement and managing and observing those warranty situations. And also we're making a lot, I'd say a good chunk of our business is in healthcare, whether that's in healthcare providers or medical device manufacturers. A lot of our business comes in the observability and governance of using AI in those spaces. I would say those and a third one certainly is architecture, engineering, and construction. But those businesses, I think, uh, are incentivized by their industry by default to make
Okay.
sure they're doing enterprise AI or governed AI. Yeah.
Okay. Very, very interesting. Now let's a little bit shift the gear about psychology of CTOs.
Cool. Yeah.
So we'll go a little bit faster into that one because I want to understand how you think as a CTO, and then we'll go on to the next one as well. Let's say you, Mark, join a new team as a CTO.
Yeah. Yeah.
What you do on the first day and in the first week. Tell me more about that. You analyze the team, what exactly you do exactly, and tell me a little bit about like granular step. I go talk to team like that, and then you understand, oh, who is doing what founders want. Tell me more about like a CTO version of that. What exactly you do as a CTO when you join a company.
Yeah. So whether I join the company or also when we're talking to a partner, or also when we're looking at new technologies, the first thing I come into is, yeah, why am I in this situation? Is it something that I've initiated? Is it something that someone asked me to do? Right? I'm foreign. I put myself in that frame of mind. And there's some real basic things about what people do, and trying to really say, what do you actually do each day? Not only, not again, and this isn't limited to developers or engineers, right? What are the investors doing? What are the salespeople doing? Really understanding that, to use technology terms, that graph, right? And by the way, you iterate on that, right? Because you could spend a month doing that, but you really probably need to do it in a couple of hours. And then you go back and then start talking to people. But once you understand what they do, really, what are they taking to market? What are we taking to market? And who's buying that, and
Makes sense.
why are they buying that? Now you can start mapping it back to, okay, well, how do you get things done? What are the processes you use? Who are the stakeholders? Who's the shadow organizations? Who are really, the people who drive things? Who are the people that aren't showing up on the org chart that really, are the key, decision points or people who affect things. But that's an iterative cycle, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the first things that go in is, what do they do? What what who are the stakeholders involved, and why do people consume what they're doing?
Makes sense. So it's understanding the land where you're gonna start working. Is it
Right.
why, what, who, and understand.
Yeah.
They try to connect the dots and then kind of start working on that one. Okay.
And then when you get obviously, in the technology side, y- really, and this is never ending, but you really think, what is the technology differentiation? And
Hmm.
that usually is three areas. Um, either, like you look at, organizations that are pushing the technology envelope, like say a frontier AI organization where they're doing research, right? And their value comes from that technical differentiation. Um, or it might be they're operationally excellent, right? They're very efficient at what they're doing. Or it could be that they're really good with customers, the customer intimacy. And it's usually one of those three things. And so how does the technology, and the types of people and the research you have to do for a research organization versus being operationally efficient versus being customer intimate, close
Love
with the
this space.
customer.
Love this space. The way that you have described as, is it
Yeah.
technical USP company? Is it customer driven company, or is it
Yeah.
like the operational? I think love this energy. Love.
Yeah.
I get
'Cause
very good
that
insight.
describes the technology you have to build for those type of
I
organizations.
agree. And that's how you convince the people as well, because then you start understanding how people work, and then as a CTO to drive the innovation, that's how you talk to in their language. So love it. Now, as a CTO, you have to take a lot of decisions as well. You went into a
Yeah.
company, you understand everything. Now you have to take the decision, right? Because and then you have to convince them as well based on the type of the company. Is it customer driven company? Is it operational excellence company, or is it's an innovation based company? Based on that, as a CTO, you have to drive the innovations, because
Yeah.
as a CTO being hired for a specific reason, and that's what exactly they do. Now you have to take a lot of decision in that as well, right?
Yeah.
Tell me one incident where you took that particular decision as a CTO. Nobody was believing in you, but after a 6 month or a 1 year, they were like, "Thanks, Mark, because of you took the decision. We are here today." Tell me like
Yeah.
that one incident.
The I'm just laughing whether they ever get to the thanks Mark part, but the ones that, and I'll think back, into a recently previous organization, but I think the commitment to, uh, and this has evolved, right, to taking in and managing open community driven software, whether that's open source or open technology, right? And this is, I think, evolved over, I'd say, the past 5 to 10 years. But you know, in the AI space, there used, there, I should say, there's still that case where there's these, the the PhDs from this, and we're just going to do what they're doing, versus there's communities going on, and that taking in that community knowledge, and applying it in an enterprise way. But I think I've in the past met some fierce resistance, and I think more and more people seeing that there's innovation that comes from a lot of different places. So I think that's one that I don't know if anybody's ever said thanks, Mark, for that, but I think I know I was met resistance, and I can picture those discussions in the past where
Yeah.
it's like, oh no, the ivory tower data science things needs to be yet. And I'm like, well, yeah, but look what this community is doing with this.
Sure. Yeah, it's open source is definitely is
Yeah.
moving so fast, and the enterprises also started adopting that. That's a very good point that you mentioned. Is like, if you are an enterprise and if you say use this open source, there is always a fear resistant. Oh, no, 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 we
Yeah.
cannot use it. Oh, no, 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 we are compliant. Oh, we need to make sure we. I get it. I mean that I also been in the same situation, so it's
Yeah.
always good. Yeah.
And I think, the problem, I'm sure you see it too, right? And I see a lot of people will say, well, it's not this or it's not that, and it's true, it's not this or it's not that. The question is though, what's the energy behind it? Because back to our discussion in the beginning, looking 6 months down the road, 18 months, is there, because a lot of things can be addressed, right? If there's a lot of energy behind that particular capability. You look at things in robotics and open
True.
standards
Yeah.
and robotics, right? And then you say, well, there's not this or that, it's not that. I'm like, yeah, but is that a physical limitation, or is that
Mm.
just because the community hasn't built it yet? And is there energy behind that community? Because it'll probably get there then.
True. Yeah, that's true. And now let me ask you the exactly opposite question.
Yeah.
Where you as a CTO took the decision, you thought like, I'm 100% right. But after 6 months, you realize, oh my gosh, I broke this company because of X
Sure.
decision.
Yeah. Uh, Hopefully it's more almost broke it, but as opposed to broke it. Yeah, but um, yeah, I think, and I can picture a particular situation where um uh the the this is almost the opposite, where I saw the technology was better.
Hmm.
Um and and the industry went a different way. And by the way, I won't get into it, but yeah, that technology is better. But it didn't matter because the whole industry went a different way. And so my driving towards an optimal technology solution, as opposed to realizing that there was more dynamics in there. And if industry goes one way and you're out there, sometimes if nobody's using your software or whatever you've built,
Mm.
it's just a hobby.
That's true.
It only
That's
matters if somebody's actually using it, and if an industry goes one way, it doesn't matter that your thing is better. So,
But does it ever happen? Because I just want to
yeah,
inform to audience, like as a CTO, you also take the decision which might broke the company as well. I mean, but that is the part of the process, you know. I mean, so.
yeah. So I that's where I go back to those shared understanding. I think it really, I'll go back to really early on, not to dwell on my backstory, but when I was first in the Navy, there was an old Commodore, who said, treat orders like wishes.
Mm.
You only get three of them. So he goes, so when you're out there, try to get things done without telling people what to do. And I think bringing an organization along, as opposed to just saying, I'm the smartest person in the room, this is what we're going to do, because then the organization is all in it together, right? And it's not just, oh, Mark screwed us up, right? So I think, that not only, yes, you have to take a decision, right? You're the CTO, you have to take decisions. But bringing people along,
Mm.
such that it's uh, people collectively have that point of view, I think is important, where you're not just, you didn't just, drive the bus off the cliff and everybody else, there was nothing they could do about it. Right? So,
Perfect. Yeah. No, I agree. I think you pointed out the right point. Is like you have to make sure your team goes along the way with, and everybody's
yeah.
aligned on the same board. Otherwise,
And
it's different.
And you got to, to me, I like, you got to take things in there. There's some brilliant people I get to work with every day, and they have good ideas,
True.
right? And a matter of fact, I need to rely on the fact that they don't always agree with me, right?
Yeah.
Because
True.
sometimes, and empowering people to do that, I think um uh is an important trait of the CTO as well.
As a CTO,
Is
yeah, I agree.
there's a lot of, a matter of fact, I think one of the wasted talents we have, there's a lot of smart people that we all get to work with that sometimes, they're like, I'm just gonna stay quiet
True.
and do my
Yeah,
thing.
no ego as a CTO, work together with the smart people, make sure we achieve the goal all together as a company
Yeah.
or as an organization. Love it. Wait,
Yeah, the
perfect.
way you said that's a great point. I like the way you said that.
Yeah, sure, perfect. So let's now get to a rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Yeah, are you ready?
Yes. Rapid
Okay,
fire.
great. Yeah, the first one, biggest myth about being a CTO.
Yes. Yeah. So, th- yeah, to me, and we just taught it's that you're the smartest guy in the room.
Right.
Yeah, so that is, that's a lot of, some CTOs have that smartest guy in the room complex, right?
Great.
But you're not.
Enterprise AI in 3 years, where you see what is the hype right now, where you see the reality, or you can tell me both as well.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's both. I think uh there AI is transforming things, but it's not in the way people think it is.
Okay, right.
Um,
And one tool you think that you're gonna change by tomorrow in your current team that is not useful, just remove that tomorrow.
yeah, uh, I know ticketing systems have value, these long lists of ticketing systems, and then
I see.
yeah. But I'll do a second one too,
Yeah, go ahead.
on stand-ups. Yeah, so this will be a more funny one, but actually though a true one. Remove all chairs on stand-ups. Actually stand up when you're standing up, because the meeting will go a lot quicker. I think sometimes
True.
people start discussing too many things that if they didn't have a chair, they might not discuss that.
That's true. I mean, that I totally agree with that. Now, tell me, like, best CTO that you have worked before, and then you adopt their psychology. You feel like, okay, this is how the decision can be taken, or it could be your life, wherever you have worked previously. Is it in Navy? It could be in nuclear reactor plant as well, or it could be in the military communication part where you met somebody previously and thought, okay, this was the person I like and admire the most.
Yeah, Kwok Lee at Yuri Systems, who is when I and that was, we were a successful startup that was eventually acquired for $1 billion. A lot
Right.
driven on his capabilities. Yeah, but he was definitely, to me, the best CTO that I got to work with and for. Incredibly challenging. He demanded rigor. I remember being in, I can still, I picture right now being in his office, and not having all the detailed background on the rigor on something that I was proposing. I never did that again. But then, once I did that, he was like, all right, you've done all those details. Now what do you think?
Hmm.
So he demanded both. He demanded that you did the quality research,
Hmm.
but then that you drew conclusions. And he often, once you got there, he said, "All right, now go execute it." Right.
It,
So,
yeah.
so it was, yeah,
Good, good, good. Now, I think that trait is must have as a CTO. I love it. Last book
yeah.
that you read and then that changed your philosophy or the thought process.
Yeah. So, I was just on vacation, so I was reading some fiction. So, and I certainly like fiction. I think fiction, how writers write about people and how they interact is an important thing. On the business side, I wouldn't say it's the last book, but I think the one I think about a lot is really Jobs to Be Done Theory. Clay Christensen from Harvard, who had really wrote it. By the way, I don't agree with all of the theory, but really thinking about, you know, what people are actually doing and what jobs they need to get done,
Hmm.
what jobs they want to do, what jobs they don't want to do, and sometimes products are the things they don't want to do are sometimes the most important. And sometimes if you position a product that people, well, I want to do that part, and you're like now you're removing, so I think Jobs to Be Done theory on Clay Christensen is a
Great.
very good book. Yeah.
The last one in the rapid fire. When you hire somebody, what is one characteristic that you see in that particular candidate that is a must
Yeah, yeah, I think it's initiative.
initiative?
Um,
Okay.
I think it's, and especially probably this because around my leadership style, I tend to try to drive leadership management by objectives, and so people who can uh, not only can but will do things without me telling them to do it, I think is really important. Now, the other two things I would argue is learning. Can they, because no matter what, there's going to be technology that they don't know how to do right now. Are they not, afraid of learning it?
Hmm.
Um, and then, to me, steward leadership. Do they take care and take pride in the things that they've been given, and are they a good steward of those things? But the main thing, I think, people, you have to, everybody has fears, right? I have fear, like, but you have to be able to say, you know what, I'm a little afraid, but I'm going to go try to do this.
Great. Perfect. I think that says a lot of things. Uh, this ends to a rapid fire questions. And then one major question I have personally for you, Mark. You have been kind of moving from nuclear system to neural networks, from
Yep.
military communication to, I would say, autonomous AI system. During this whole journey, you have done a lot of work.
Yeah.
What is that one thing still you are trying to do every day? Why you are waking up in the from your bed and say, okay, I still need to work? What is that motivations you have as a CTO?
Yeah, it's still, when I see something and I'm like, how does that work? Or why does that work?
Curiosity. Okay.
Or or why don't we have this? And I think, from early on, I remember a little kid trying to understand, how does a car go? And my father explaining internal combustion engine to me, right? So, and trying to understand those mechanisms, I think, and there's always something new. And you're like, all right, how does, and a lot of times then you've learned something, but then you haven't learned it in a few years, and you're like, all right, is it still being done that way? Or is it,
Mm,
so I think that just kind of innate feeling like I want to know how that works, or I want to know why we don't have something that can do that.
makes sense. So it's the curiosity that makes you like every day. Oh, let me do that.
Yeah, yeah, or just and not being satisfied when you see something and you don't
Great.
understand it.
Yeah, love it.
You know,
I
it's like,
I like
uh,
it. Yeah, great.
like if you see a plane and like, how can that plane fly? Like, you know, well, there's lift. All right. Well, what is lift? And then, or neural, how is it predicting this in the
That's
computer
true.
vision? Well, what is it doing? Like, what is the mechanism? Like, it's not magic. There's some people believe in the magic, but I don't,
Yeah.
I don't see this.
Great. No, this is exactly why, I started the CTO story. Um, because I think the people who are building the future of the infrastructure and they are not part of the magazine cover story, I mean, but they keep building. Midnight, they are thinking how things work, how this is working. They keep building the technology, keep building the future. They keep talking about how things might look like, and then keep solving the things, the problem solving skill itself, right? I mean, so that's exactly we have started to uncover those story, making sure people knows what exactly CTO does. And thank you for being on the show, Mark. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Nishant. I so much appreciate you taking the time and yeah, and bringing up these things. I also appreciate all the times I've gotten to work with you in the past and the great
Great.
capabilities and that you share with people as well, right?
Yeah.
Back to how things work. You're very eager and willing to explain things to people, and I
Thank you
think
so
it's a
much.
great service to the industry.
Yeah, pleasure. Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Hope you like this podcast and you learn about Mark, how he thinks, how he take the decision, and what his day looks like. If you want to hear the similar story about a CTO, how to become CTO, and what exactly the CTO does, please subscribe to this channel and you will hear this amazing story of a tech leader, CTOs like this. Thank you so much.